It's bad. It's so bad. Like, I've tried to sit down and read the Witcher books. I've tried. I really have. And I read a little bit of it before I went to bed, right? Before I went to bed this morning, and it was just, man, so unbelievable how boring and dull and derivative this series actually is. Like I cannot even like fathom how bad the games must be because this novel has to be the most uninspired trite I think I've read in years, right? Like I've been reading a little bit more fantasy, right? Lately, I've been reading stuff like Dragon Riders of Pern. Well, that's kind of a weird. Okay. Dragon Riders is allegedly, ostensibly a sci-fi story, but it has like dragons and shit. So it's just it has creatures that just happen. It has like genetically modified dragons. Like they go to a foreign planet. They go to like another planet and discover these creatures and like genetically modify them to be like bigger so they can like ride on them and stuff. It's just okay, so it's sci-fi fantasy, whatever. Sci-fi fantasy, whatever Dragon Rider is supposed to be. I've been reading stuff like that. I've been reading like stuff like Stephen King's The Stand. I've been reading what else? What was that other one? All sorts of stuff, right? Like all sorts of stuff from all sorts of different writers, and I straight up think, right? Like I straight up believe that this has to be like the worst book I've read in a long, long time. Like I am not exaggerating. Like this novel has the absolute worst pacing I think I've ever seen. Well, maybe no, not pacing. It has this very terrible habit of like overtly explaining the setup, right? At the beginning, it goes on for something like 30 pages with just this poet going into the backstory of like Geralt the Witcher and his relationship with Yennefer the Enchantress, I think. And it's just unbelievably stupid and unbelievably boring and just it has all these weird concepts that don't really make a whole lot of sense. Like it has something called like a child surprise. Like apparently Siri, the super special girl who's super powerful in Witcher 3, allegedly, according to Angry Joe, because again I haven't played Witcher 3 yet. It has like this girl who's called like a child surprise, and they don't really explain what the fuck a child surprise is. Like, was she unexpected? Was she an accident? Like, that's what I think when I hear like the term child surprise. I don't think like super magical, uh, mediumistic powers, right? Like, I don't see a child surprise having like being like possessed by something, right? And that's what that's the thing here is that like it has these very generic ideas. There's nothing wrong with having generic ideas, but they have to be executed well. They have to be interesting, and nothing in the book is interesting. Like absolutely nothing. Like if they establish the world better, if they establish the setting better, like Triss going to meet Geralt and like meeting Siri for the first time, that should have had an impact. Have had an impact because we should have known about the Witchers. We should have known a little bit about their culture. We should have done more about like how girls aren't typically trained. We should have known more about like how unusual that is, and it should have had some sort of like emotional impact even that early in the story. And you can sort of tell that the author, Andrzej Sapkowski, was sort of going for that, and it just fails, right? It's just uninspired and kind of a mess. And I just, I'm already bored. Okay, like I didn't read, I haven't gotten a super far into it, but like I honestly would drop it at this point if like it wasn't based on a video game franchise. the game of the year of 2015. Like I would not be. Did I say based on? I meant like the series that inspired that overrated trash. Like if it wasn't, if it didn't inspire that, like I would not even bother because it's it's lazy, it's uninspired, it's boring, and it's just there's nothing about it that's appealing to me. And I think as time goes on, that feeling is only going to get worse. Right? Here's what I was reading last night regarding Triss and her relationship with Geralt. This is the kind of exposition you get in this novel. I've no control over myself, she thought. I'm behaving like a stupid adolescent. Or even worse, like an old maid deprived of affection. I can't even think logically. Of course it wasn't Gerald. Don't get excited, little one. Don't get excited. Just think of his expression in the stable. You've seen expressions like that before. You've seen them. So don't kid yourself. The foolish, contrite, embarrassed expressions of men who want to forget, who regret, who don't want to remember what happened, don't want to go back to what has been. By all the gods, little one, don't fool yourself. It's different this time. It's never different. And you know it because, after all, you've had a fair amount of experience. This is, of course, Triss being angsty because Geralt hasn't like banged her yet. Like she's gone out into like some Witcher hideout expecting to be banged by Geralt and instead finds that he's not really interested in her. And she spends like their entire time together like angsting over it. Like, yeah, fuck developing their relationship. Like, fuck really establishing what exactly their relationship is and like how they treat each other. No, no. Triss's entire relationship with Geralt is defined entirely by how much she wants to bang him. And it's just kind of disgusting and kind of not really relatable, I would say. Their entire relationship seems to be like revolve around the whole like sexual aspect. Like there's no real depth there, there's no real history there, there's nothing there in the book that indicates that there's any reason to care about these people and like care about what they've been going through and caring about things that are think how things will develop from here, right? It's just everything I've seen so far seems to indicate this incredibly uninspired, lazy fantasy story that's like too focused on making Geralt out to be like some legendary badass when he's not, right? Like it's 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 very much an example of like show don't tell. Like they are telling us that Geralt is awesome. He's trying to tell us that Geralt has a huge penis and that all these women love him and like um, he has all these crazy powers and like he's like some legendary figure or whatever and it's not interesting. It just isn't. It's not selling us on this character at all. It's not developing the world at all. It's not developing the setting at all. Like there's a bit early on where yeah, the novel is called like Blood of Elves, right? There's a novel where it's trying to like set up some sort of like a social issue between like elves and other races, very very generically, I might add. And it's just not effective. It doesn't work. It doesn't like leave an impact. Right. This is something that could be interesting and is in fact interesting in other stories, right? Like, but it's not here because it's so trite and so uninspired and just so pathetic. And I do mean that, like downright pathetic, that it is impossible to take seriously. Like the Witcher books are absolute garbage. Like anyone who defends them needs to read more fantasy. They need to read like books from other writers that aren't inspired by that aren't only relevant because of fucking video games and just sort of like have more of an idea. It's baffling to me that the Witcher games have had so much attention and so much praise, despite how terrible the source material is. Like when I play The Witcher 3, like I know next to nothing about it. When I play it, I can guarantee you that I will be tearing that game apart. It is going to be essentially the Mass Effect deal all over again, where it might be the modern day equivalent of Mass Effect, in fact, where it's overhyped by these complete retards who don't know anything about RPGs, about sci-fi, about like science fiction in general, or even really the previous entries, like from the same developer, who are like overhyping this specific thing as like the best thing ever when it's really clearly a downgrade, not only from like compared to its contemporaries in other mediums, in novels and TV shows and movies, but like from the same development team. Like it's amazing to me how no one is like aware of like BioWare's history. It's just like I've never in my entire life seen like any major fan of Mass Effect talk about how they played Mass Effect and how that inspired them to go back and play BioWare's older catalog of games. Because without that hype, without that publicity, without that like mainstream attention, no one's interested. No one cares. Like The Witcher 3 sold like 20 million units. I don't think Witcher 1 and 2, it's kind of amazing how like no one talks about those. Like no one talks about other games that CG Project Red has made. Like Cyberpunk is only getting as much attention as it has because it's following right on the heels of Witcher 3. And like the third party developers, like PlayStation, Xbox fans, they are desperate for any kind of major release to promote and talk about. Like they just have nothing else to play. And I think eventually we are going to reach the point where CD Project Red sort of goes downhill. It's going to be. I cannot stand this meme that like the Polish developers are like some major development powerhouse because Witcher 3 exists. Like that's just fucking stupid. And it's really disrespectful to the Japanese developers who put out games better than Witcher 3. I want to say every month, like more than every month, several times a month. Like I just cannot fathom the ignorance it takes to suggest that The Witcher 3 is one of the best RPGs ever made. The Witcher 3 is not even worth talking about. The Witcher 3 is not going to be remembered 10 years from now. Sort of like how Mass Effect has kind of already faded from the limelight. Like The Witcher 3 is very much an irrelevant piece of shit that will not stand the test of time.